Imagine this. You're standing in a hospital hallway. A surgeon is before you. He tells you that your 25-year-old daughter's brain is dead after an accident, but her heart is still beating. Now, the surgeon asks for your permission to stop that heart, to remove it, and give it to a stranger. This isn't a scene from a movie. This was a real choice a father made in 1967. And in this video, we'll explore how that decision forever changed the very definition of life and death. At the heart of this drama were two individuals. On one side, Louis Washkansky, a 53-year-old grocer. His heart was failing, and doctors gave him only hours to live. His sole hope was a miracle. More precisely, he suffered from irreversible congestive heart failure. His heart was enlarged and functioning at only 10% of its normal capacity. On the other side, Denise Darvall, a 25-year-old woman, a victim of a car accident. Her brain was irreversibly damaged, yet her young, strong heart continued to beat in a perfect rhythm. Two destinies were about to intertwine in the most unimaginable way. This collision of fates raised three pivotal questions. Why, until that day, had dozens of heart transplant attempts worldwide resulted in immediate death? What secret weapon, not surgical but legal, did surgeon Christiaan Barnard possess? He wasn't the only one on the verge of this breakthrough. In the U.S., the surgeon Norman Shumway's team at Stanford was prepared for the operation, but was held back by legal complexities. Barnard decided to take the risk and outpace everyone. And why, even if successful, did he risk imprisonment for murder rather than receiving a Nobel Prize? Let's return to the father, Edward Darvall. He had just lost his wife in the same accident. Now, he had to make a decision about his daughter. He didn't have days or hours to deliberate. Barnard asked him for an answer within minutes. This was one of the most critical decisions in medical history, made in a state of shock and grief in mere moments. His simple yes marked the first instance in history where a relative permitted the removal of a beating heart. It was this permission that ushered in a new era of medicine. Now, pause for a second and honestly ask yourself, if you were in that father's shoes, your child's heart beating, yet doctors telling you they were gone, what would you say to the surgeon? This isn't a hypothetical question. This was a decision one man made for all of us, and its repercussions are still felt today. And here lay the main paradox. According to the laws of 1967, death was defined as the cessation of the heart, period. If Barnard were to take Denise's beating heart, he would, from a legal standpoint, be killing her. Medical law was like an old vinyl record, created for a world of stethoscopes and manual pulse checks. But Barnard already lived in a world of heart-lung machines, a completely new, digital reality for which the old rules simply didn't apply. To save one life, he had to commit a crime. To circumvent this, he put forward an idea that sounds obvious today, but was heresy then. True death isn't when the heart stops, but when the brain dies. The brain is the seat of personality, of consciousness. The heart is merely a pump that can be replaced. This idea didn't come out of nowhere. Barnard drew upon a concept described by French neurologists back in 1959, le coma dépassé, or a state beyond coma. However, this was merely a scientific theory, not the letter of the law. The concept of brain death was not enshrined in South African law, nor anywhere else for that matter. Barnard acted at his own peril, relying on his personal interpretation. In the event of failure or legal prosecution, he faced not merely a reprimand, but a charge of first-degree premeditated murder. He was literally staking his freedom and career on his ability to convince the world of his righteousness after the heart had been transplanted. Now, let's look at this through the eyes of a prosecutor from that era. To them, Barnard wasn't a hero, but a man about to open a living girl's chest and remove a functioning organ. The proof of guilt, the pulse at her wrist. The star witness for the prosecution wouldn't be a person, but a machine, an electrocardiograph, dispassionately printing a strip with Denise's perfect sinus heart rhythm. This would be undeniable evidence that the heart was alive at the moment of extraction. The case would look 100% winnable. Barnard was taking the greatest legal and medical risk in history. So permission was granted, and the ethical dilemma was resolved, at least for Barnard himself. But one more problem remained, a biological one. A wall that all his predecessors had crashed against. And this wall wasn't in the donor's chest, but in the patient's own body. December 3rd, 1967. 2 operating rooms worked in parallel, like synchronized mechanisms. Christiaan Barnard's right-hand man was his own brother, Marius. This wasn't just a surgical team. It was a family that had put everything on the line. They had no margin for error. A heart outside the body survives for mere minutes. Any delay would mean a double death. The tension was almost physically palpable. In the first operating room, the team disconnected Denise's life support. Her heart, which had been beating independently, ceased. This was the point of no return. Barnard extracted it and submerged it in an icy solution. But this wasn't just cold water. It was a special solution with a high concentration of potassium. It didn't freeze the heart. Instead, it plunged its cells into a deep metabolic hibernation, nearly nullifying their oxygen demand. It was a chemical way to put life on pause. In the adjacent room, Louis Washkansky's worn-out, diseased heart had already been removed from his chest. He lay with an empty chest cavity, a surreal sight. His life was now sustained solely by a heart-lung machine. It was a temporary, mechanical god performing the work of both heart and lungs while the primary organ was absent. A bridge between life and death constructed from pumps and tubes. In the resounding silence, everyone awaited the arrival of the new heart. And then it arrived. When Denise's heart was placed into Washkansky's chest, it looked alarmingly small. For a moment, fear gripped the surgeons. Could the heart of a 25-year-old girl adequately supply blood to the body of a 53-year-old man? Barnard grabbed the defibrillator. A jolt. Silence. Another jolt. And suddenly, a faint, barely perceptible contraction. Then another, more confident. The heart began to beat. A young girl's heart pulsed within an older man's chest. A collective sigh of relief, mingled with triumph, swept through the operating room. The operation lasted 9 hours. The heart was beating. It seemed like an absolute triumph. But when Washkansky awoke, his first words and the world's reaction would trigger a chain reaction that neither Barnard himself nor humanity was prepared for. When Louis Washkansky opened his eyes, the first thing he saw was Barnard's face. He smiled and uttered, "You promised me a new heart. You did it." These words instantly circled the globe. A man with a foreign heart wasn't just breathing. He was speaking. He was thinking. This was a living experiment that proved what philosophers had debated for centuries. Personality, soul, consciousness, they don't reside in the heart. They are in the brain. The heart is indeed just a pump, the most vital one, but merely a pump. Barnard's theory had become fact. The world's reaction was explosive. Overnight, Christiaan Barnard became the most famous person on the planet, a medical superstar. This was the era of the space race. While the USSR and USA looked to the stars, Barnard became an explorer of inner space. His fame was comparable to that of the first astronauts. His face graced the covers of every magazine, from Time to Life. Newspaper headlines screamed about a miracle. He was more than just a doctor. He was a hero who had conquered death. But behind the wave of universal admiration, another wave arose, a wave of criticism. Religious leaders accused him of playing God, invading sacred territory. Other surgeons, especially his American competitors, criticized him for haste and self-promotion. One of the sharpest critics was cardiac surgery pioneer Michael DeBakey, who called Barnard's operation not a scientific breakthrough, but a technical trick, an adventure undertaken without proper preparation. Let's introduce a hypothetical ethical risk scale. At one end lies the core principle of the Hippocratic Oath, primum non nocere, first do no harm. At the other, saving a life at any cost. Most doctors spend their careers balancing somewhere in the middle. Barnard, however, did something different that day. He declared that inaction itself was the greatest harm, and he pushed the slider all the way to the right, effectively breaking that scale for the entire medical world. and the world still debates whether it was justified. But while the world debated ethics, soul, and law, a real, ticking time bomb was already at work within Louis Washkansky's body. And this bomb had nothing to do with God or jurisprudence. This was pure, relentless biology. This bomb was called the immune system. Imagine it as your body's security service. To it, the new heart wasn't a savior but a dangerous intruder. Denise's heart cells carried protein markers, antigens, akin to a foreign military uniform. And the immune cell soldiers, antibodies, were programmed to attack any uniform they didn't recognize. They issued the command, destroy at all costs. Barnard was aware of this problem, but he catastrophically underestimated its scale. The methods for combating this in 1967 were not precise fine-tuning, but rather carpet bombing. Barnard unleashed the full might of contemporary medicine on Washkansky's body. It was a triple assault. The drugs azathioprine and prednisone, along with direct body irradiation via a cobalt gun. All of this was intended to completely obliterate his immune system. It was like burning down an entire house to get rid of a single intruder. And here lay the tragic irony. Denise's heart was functioning perfectly, but Washkansky's body, stripped of all defenses, became an open gateway for any infection. He contracted bilateral pneumonia. 18 days after the triumph, he died. The autopsy revealed a crucial detail. His body hadn't even begun to reject the new heart. It was in perfect condition. He was killed by the medicine for a disease he didn't even have yet. So what was this operation? Surgically, it was a 100% success. Humanly, it was a failure. The patient was dead. The greatest breakthrough or a tragic mistake. It was akin to the first moon landing, where the astronaut landed perfectly but perished because his spacesuit couldn't protect him from moon dust. The mission proved that flight was possible, but it revealed a new, unexpected enemy. And the answer to that question was not at all what everyone had anticipated. And one more question, now directed at you. Imagine doctors give you a choice, guaranteed to die in 2 days in a hospital ward, or a chance to live for another 18 days of a full life, but with the risk of dying from complications. What would you choose? Your answer speaks volumes about how you value time and hope. Washkansky's death was not a failure. It became the most crucial lesson in the history of transplantology. Medicine suddenly understood. A surgeon's job isn't that of a plumber simply replacing an old pump with a new one. It's the work of a diplomat. Their task is to convince a hostile state, the immune system, not to attack a new ambassador, the transplanted organ. The entire focus of global science shifted, moving from the blade of a scalpel to molecules in a test tube, from surgery to immunology. It was precisely this tragedy of 1967 that became the catalyst. It initiated a race for the creation of new generation medications. Thus came cyclosporin, followed by other immunosuppressants. They acted precisely like snipers, suppressing only the part of the immune system that attacked the foreign organ, while leaving the rest of the cellular army to fight real infections. The result of this shift can be measured in years of life. While the first patient lived 18 days, today the average life expectancy with a transplanted heart is more than 10 to 15 years. To date, over 150,000 such operations have been performed worldwide. That's the population of an entire city. A city of people who received a second chance at life. And all of this became possible only because that first attempt precisely pinpointed the true enemy. But this story isn't only about those who were saved. It's also about the one who saved them. Denise Darvall's tragic death gave the world something far greater than a single beating heart. She and her father became the patient zeros of the entire modern organ donation system. Their decision created an ethical precedent, the very foundation upon which today's laws and protocols stand, saving hundreds of thousands of lives each year through kidney, liver, and lung transplants. One operation, one death, and as a result, millions of lives saved. But the main question remains unanswered. Who was Christiaan Barnard himself, and what primary lesson should we draw from his story today? The primary lesson from this story unfolds into three simple conclusions. Firstly, ethics proved more crucial than the scalpel. Barnard's true breakthrough wasn't surgical, it was philosophical. He dared to redefine death itself, and only that made the operation possible. Secondly, the most dangerous enemy is always within. For decades, medicine battled diseased organs. This story revealed that the main fight is against a healthy body, against its own immune system. And thirdly, the value of a glorious failure. Washkansky's death wasn't merely a tragedy. It was the most significant setback in medical history. It pointed to the true enemy and directed science in the right direction. One such failure proved more beneficial than 100 small victories. And all of this brings us back to that hospital corridor. To Edward Darvall, the father who had lost everything. Without his quiet yes, uttered in a state of shock, nothing would have been possible. No operation, no breakthrough, no millions of lives saved. His decision was like the flap of a butterfly's wings, unleashing a hurricane that forever changed medicine. Sometimes, the greatest revolutions in science don't begin with grand pronouncements in conference halls, but with a quiet consent given in the darkest hour. Christiaan Barnard's story is one of genius bordering on madness. So, who was he at that moment? A brilliant visionary who gazed into the future and risked everything for progress, or a reckless experimenter who crossed an ethical line for fame? I'd like you to answer in the comments with just one word. Right, genius, or experimenter? Let's see what the majority thinks. Thank you for watching.